Back in August of 1946, the city of Calcutta, it just exploded. A firestorm of violence so bad it earned the name the Week of the Long Knives. And you have to understand, this was way more than just a riot. It was a really grim turning point on the path to India's independence and ultimately its partition. So let's get into what happened during this incredibly dark chapter.
And just a month before all this chaos, you have this incredibly stark warning. It comes from Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of the Muslim League. India divided or destroyed. I mean, there's no middle ground there, right? That single statement really set the stage for what was about to unfold. A choice presented in the most absolute, terrifying terms.
So you have to ask, how on earth did things get this bad? Well, the whole subcontinent was basically a tinderbox. It was completely on edge, stuck in this political deadlock that was just pushing everyone closer and closer to the brink.
And you know, it's just wild how quickly it all unraveled. See, in 1946, there was this thing called the Cabinet Mission Plan. It was pretty much the last best hope for a united India, but it all fell apart. In just a matter of weeks, the talks between the Muslim League and the Congress Party just collapsed. So the Muslim League pulls its support and announces something called Direct Action Day for August 16th. The goal? To really hammer home their demand for a separate state.
Now, a call for a protest. On the surface, that sounds simple enough, right? But not in Calcutta in 1946. The atmosphere there was so incredibly tense, so supercharged, that this call to action wasn't just a call to protest, it was the spark that was about to set the entire city on fire.
So what was Direct Action Day supposed to be? Well, the idea was for this huge nationwide demonstration, a show of force, a display of political strength to really underline the demand for Pakistan. It was meant to be peaceful, but in the pressure cooker that was 1946, that line between a peaceful protest and all-out violence, it was about to get completely tragically erased. And then you have this one decision, a really critical one, made locally in Bengal. The government there, which was led by H.S. Sukarwati, they declared August 16th a public holiday. Now, whatever the reason behind that was, the effect was immediate. It meant that huge crowds from all communities were going to be out on the streets. And that, right there, just massively ramped up the risk of a major confrontation. So all that political tension, it was about to just explode into something truly horrific. What came next was 4 days of absolute unfiltered chaos.
And then it happened. The morning of August 16th, the city just erupts. It starts with things like forcing shops to close, a few skirmishes here and there, but it spirals out of control so fast.
Suddenly, you have entire neighborhoods just being set ablaze. The sky over Calcutta literally turns black with smoke from all the fires. At the same time, armed mobs are just roaming the streets. They're hunting people down based on their community. It was targeted murder, pure and simple.
And then came the looting. Shops were smashed open, homes were plundered. The city's economy just ground to a halt.
In the violence, it became horrifically personal. Mass assault, sexual violence, used as weapons to terrorize and paralyze the entire city.
And look, it's really important to understand this wasn't just some random mob violence that got out of hand. There are reports that point to organized groups, like one called Mir Fuz, that were actually supplying weapons and even directing the mobs. So for 4 straight days, the city was just lost to total anarchy. But what really shocked everyone, even people who had seen riots before, was the level of brutality. The mutilation, the rape, it was a kind of violence that was just different. And it was a terrifying preview of the even worse horrors that were on the horizon with partition.
So, after 4 days, when the fires finally started to die down and the smoke cleared, the world had to face the absolutely shocking human cost of it all.
We'll probably never know the exact number of people who died. The official estimates start around 4,000, but some reports go as high as 20,000. Just think about that range. The fact that we can't even narrow it down, that alone tells you everything you need to know about the sheer, overwhelming chaos that just swallowed the city.
And, of course, the tragedy was so much bigger than just the death toll. You had tens of thousands more people injured, and hundreds of thousands were suddenly homeless, their lives completely shattered, any sense of safety just gone, forever.
In the middle of all this chaos, you get these really complex, really controversial figures. A perfect example is a man named Gopal Mukherjee, who is also known as Gopal Patha. Now, depending on who you ask, he was either a hero, a man who organized armed groups to protect Hindu neighborhoods from attack, or he was an instigator,
someone who just escalated the cycle of violence and led brutal counterattacks. His story really shows you how, in a situation like this, the line between being a defender and being an aggressor can get terrifyingly blurry.
You see, the Great Calcutta Killings, this wasn't just an event that lasted 4 days and then it was over. No, this left a deep, permanent scar, not just on the city, but on the very soul of the nation.
The fallout was just devastating. Economically, the city's fabric was torn to shreds. Trade just tanked. But the really deep wounds, the ones that lasted, they were social. The trust that existed between Hindu and Muslim communities, it was shattered. And that created this deep division, this polarization, that would honestly poison the region for generations to come. The whole thing became this haunting subject in books and memoirs. It was the only way artists could even begin to try and process something so horrible.
So if you step back and look at the whole thing, the chain of events is just tragically clear, isn't it? You start with a political deadlock that unleashes this unimaginable wave of violence. The human cost is catastrophic. And it all cements this event as the horrifying opening act for partition, leaving behind this legacy of division and economic ruin that would echo for decades.
There's a quote that really hits the nail on the head about why this was so significant. The violence's brutality foreshadowed the partition violence to come. And that's exactly it. The sheer, shocking brutality in Calcutta, it was an omen. It was a terrifying sneak peek of the kind of violence that was about to sweep across the entire subcontinent just 1 year later during partition.
And that really leaves us with this huge, lingering question. A lot of historians look at this and say, this was it. This was the point of no return, the first real battle of partition. So you have to wonder, after what happened in Calcutta, was the absolute catastrophe of 1947 just inevitable? Or was there still a chance, however small, for a different path? It's a question that history is still grappling with.